So you obviously caught the new Modern Warfare because we played it a couple times, right? Fun game, right? But it's obviously like
War Crime Simulator,
the Call of Duty franchise. Yeah, and we understand the Call of Duty franchise, not even just like proximity to the U.S. military, but they're just like out in the open working with the U.S. military
right.
to like do military recruiting, whether that's through like ads that are directly like with the army or other shit that they're doing, or just, war game. It's a fun game. But
framing the U.S. military in a positive way, yeah.
Exactly, or the British military or whoever the fuck they're like centering on. Western military, always, basically. Right, a good white military. But I think it's just like so funny that the new Modern Warfare game, Modern Warfare, the very first mission that you hop into in the campaign is you're Ghost, right? You're making your way through this canyon.
Right.
I think it's somewhere in the Middle East because it's like a deserty place, but I think you're killing like a Russian guy because,
of course,
they're very timely. But anyway, you're going through this desert, and then you spot your target who is a mile away. You've got your gun in hand, right? But you don't use it once throughout the prologue. And you look at binoculars, you say, okay, he's like 30 clicks out. You mark him, and then instantly you're controlling a missile, and you fucking kill him from the air. And I just think the irony is so palpable that in the Modern Warfare game, that's how you start.
Yeah, no, I think that that lines up quite well, even though he's British, isn't he?
Yeah.
He's not with the US.
I think like the main characters are all British.
Yeah. For a game called Modern Warfare, I think it makes sense.
No, literally.
Modern Warfare.
And it's like, that was really funny to me, obviously, because like that's gold, right? But what was even better is like, I think I'm like halfway through the campaign. Like I played it when I first got it. I haven't played it back, but I want to finish it because it's a fun game. All war crimes aside. And my favorite part of the campaign so far has been, I think it's the 10th mission. I can't remember what it's called, but it's when you first start working with Shadow Company. And this is the first time you're introduced to soldiers in the U.S. military that are like blatantly like working for the U.S. You work with like a U.S. general and you work with the U.S. CIA agent, but that's not like the army, right? That's not, these aren't the on-the-ground army either, because the first time you work with the U.S. guys, you are in an AC-130 for 2 missions, just raining hell from 2 miles up in the sky.
Untouchable.
Literally untouchable. They're shooting rockets at you, but you just hit them with the flares, and then you annihilate them with the 40-millimeter cannon. It's crazy. It's so fucking funny.
That's like, because Modern Warfare is like the peak propaganda game for the U.S. military, right?
Yeah.
Like there's other military games, or not just U.S. military, but militarism in general. There's other military games that don't paint it in such a positive light, or that may, have some kind of commentary about warfare.
Like Spec Ops: The Line.
Modern
like
Warfare
that.
is strictly just like propaganda. Military is good.
Pretty much.
And I love that that's the framing, is that the U.S. military is just untouchable. Eye of God in the sky, crashing down on people that cannot defend themselves.
Because it's like some of the games, they try to have like more of like a progressive spin on like the typical like military war campaign message, but it always ends up where it's like, oh yeah, but still the military guys are good and they're just fighting the bad military guys.
Yeah.
It kind of reminds me of a lot of rhetoric you hear around cops and how it's just a bad apple. And that's going to lead us into a story we're covering, unfortunately, later in this episode. So let's roll the intro music and get into it.
Welcome back to Head in the Office, everybody. This episode today is Racism Extravaganza.
Oh, yeah.
It's all about racism.
Unfortunately.
We're talking about cops. We're talking about Steven Crowder and the Daily Wire. We're talking about Ron
Florida?
DeSantis in Florida. Just the most racist topics you can imagine.
We're talking about AP, but not the AP. Even though they had a bit of controversy this weekend. Did you see that?
I didn't. What was that?
Bruh. They made a tweet talking about how it's like
demeaning. Yes. To say the French?
Yeah. They said, we apologize for labeling French people as the French. What else are you gonna fucking call them?
I hate the French.
Like obviously there are contexts where like saying like, oh, the blacks, very bad, right? Not something I say.
Quote, yeah.
Exactly.
Charlie
quote,
Kirk says that.
The blacks, or quote, like the Jews. Like you can tell when it's wrong. But like the French, come on now.
I wish there was a slur that I could say for the French, just like Canadians.
I need a slur for the French and Canadians and the French Canadians especially.
Look, this is a 100% real take. Some
Fuck
slurs are good. Sometimes you're obligated
Literally.
to use derogatory language. Anyways, I'm going to remind you all before we get into this episode to check out everything in the description: Patreon, YouTube, TikTok, Instagram. Subscribe. Tell your friends to subscribe. Leave a comment, regardless of where you are. If you're on YouTube, or I guess you can't leave comments on podcasting platforms, but wherever you're listening.
True.
Leave a comment, like, subscribe, everything you can to boost it. We appreciate the help as always.
Exactly.
Speaking of help, though,
we've
got many we beg every week for these reviews, right? Hands and knees.
I'm on my knees,
begging in front of the camera, telling you if you don't leave a review, like, it's going to be bad.
Yeah.
And this week, the listeners came through. We have many reviews from
the
Apple.
The opposite of bad. In fact,
if you all want your review read, go ahead and leave it on Apple Podcasts, 5-star review. Leave us something to read. We'll read it on the show. You can also DM it on Instagram, but we have so many Apple today that we just can't get to the Instagram reviews.
We'll save the Instagram for next week, just in case there's nothing going on.
Yeah, sometimes there's ebbs and flows in these things.
Exactly. Sometimes we get 5 reviews in one day and then none the next week.
Exactly. So you wanna take these back and forth style?
We'll take these back and forth. You wanna kick it off?
I got the first one. First one is subject line fantastic, fact checked, and hilarious by Cat into Hat. They say Hiddo is great. I've only found it in the past couple of weeks, but I learn a lot each week when I don't have time to read the news stories. Your takes are both informative and hilarious, a learning moment while also making the world seem a little less bleak. I also appreciate the inclusivity of your discussions. It's nice to hear you two talking about my fellow trans folk like, well, people who deserve rights and all that, and not a political object for debate. All that to say, I definitely recommend y'all to my friends and family. Peace and love, boys. Can't wait to see what's next. Jax.
Let's go.
Thanks for your review, Jax. I
appreciate it. Fact check too. Do you remember when we first started? We had a review that was kind of like that, but I fact checked things and you guys are all right. And then they're like, I'm a liberal, but I like the show. I wonder what happened to them.
There was a liberal that liked the show. There was also I think someone that called themselves not a neoliberal, but somewhere on the right, like center right economic.
Yeah, kind of that was a couple months ago.
Yeah, that was. I always like to hear that people that don't agree with us are listening.
For sure.
Yeah,
for sure. So interesting. Take them. Grab them with my
because it's something I do for content gathering purposes, right?
Oh, absolutely. But are they getting content off of me? Because I'm not genuinely going and listening to Steven Crowder.
Right, I'll listen to what he has to say or what Ben Shapiro, Tucker Carlson has to say for rebuttals and content, but I won't do it just to hear them out. You know what I mean? Because they have nothing to say to me.
Exactly. No, I'm not I bet Steven Crowder had a really interesting take on this, or Steven Crowder's a funny guy. Let me listen to him joke around a bit.
Anyway,
the next review, Hiddo is Pulling Me Through by Mad Eye Moody. As someone who follows the Daily American political antics, it's so nice to see a good political podcast I can listen to. It's very fun and somehow remains more or less lighthearted when even when covering not so lighthearted topics. It is extremely entertaining and gets me through my Kentucky high school days.
Rand Paul.
Wow. Plus, it somewhat gives a peek into college life, which I appreciate as I start my application process soon. Most definitely the best pod I've listened to.
Oh,
Kentucky is crazy.
Kentucky is crazy. Starting your college life is crazy. I hope you get out of Kentucky. That'd be my suggestion.
Yeah, no
Out-of-state tuition is crazy. Even crazier than being in Kentucky.
But Kentucky,
Exactly. Good versus evil at this point.
Exactly.
Next one is Bait and Switch by Demi Deuce. They say, I was promised feet pics, but got political commentary instead. It's good, I'll stay, but I'm still waiting on the advertised goods.
One out. You were never promised feet pics. You see, when we were advertising the Q&A, back when we were at that hump on the Patreon, right? We said you could even ask anything, even ask for feet pics. Mm-hmm. And incidentally, no one asked for feet pics.
Someone asked for feet size. Not
and
the
I
same
gave
thing.
it. I gave my feet size.
I'm a man of my word.
I did. Nobody asked for the feet pics. Next review.
Yeah, that's on y'all.
Exactly. Perfect Politics by Arthur. This podcast is great for hearing about a perfect mixture of culture war issues while also following the working of the government, all while laughing along. Podcast is gas, boys. I'm one of the rare people that found it from YouTube. That's crazy.
Wow.
Just hit it when you're recommended.
Was it from, I would bet it's from YouTube Shorts. Because our YouTube Shorts get boosted a lot more than just our regular episode content does. But if you did find us just on episodes and you listen to an hour, 15 minutes or whatever, that's crazy.
I can't imagine not even an hour 30. Imagine the Mikhail Goodman pod pops up and you just see two and 12 minutes.
I very rarely see content boosted that's over an hour in like an episode format
That's
that I
facts,
like will
yeah.
stop and listen to,
I'll
unless
say,
it's like some more news or
a
something.
video essay, but like
Right.
I've never had like a podcast recommended to me on YouTube.
But just different people, I guess.
Different people, true.
Next one, Based by Fish. They say, I'm a 24-year-old woman from Racine, Wisconsin, and this podcast is hosted by two dudes that are my age and from pretty close to me. Yeah, we're in Michigan, Wisconsin. Look at that.
Yeah.
They use the same vocab as me and aren't cringe while doing so. I found the show from TikTok about 2 months ago and have been listening since. I love the hosts aren't afraid to call out politicians from both sides of the aisle. Jeremy and Gage have some of the most #based taste in political commentary sphere. I do have a question though. Oh gosh, I did not pre-read this, so let's see. From this list, what is the most nightmare blunt rotation if you had to pick 5? Tucker Carlson, Nick Adams, Joe Manchin, Kirsten Sinema, Lindsey Graham, Matt Gaetz, Alex Jones, Don Jr., Marjorie Taylor Greene, and Laura Ingraham. Thanks for making the middle of the work week tolerable and keep up the good
If
work.
we're talking nightmare blunt rotation, it's easy. It's got to be Don Jr., MTG, Alex Jones. Well, Alex Jones might be fun actually. Don Jr., MTG, Matt Gaetz, Laura Ingraham,
Gotta be Nick Adams.
and Nick Adams.
Nick Adams, yeah.
I would love to have Nick Adams on. Like Alex Jones, like there's entertainment in some of the things he says, no matter how fucking outrageous and ridiculous there are. Sometimes he can be funny, but none of these other people have ever been funny.
You might get Matt Gaetz to confess.
This is actually a sting op.
Yeah, you might. If you get him fucked up enough, you might get a confession on him.
This next review, Love the Bod by Essence. Sup, boys. I've been watching for the past 5 weeks and have loved listening to every episode during my commutes to my liberal brainwashing session at college while doing homework. Thanks for giving me such great insight on leftist ideologies on a weekly basis. P.S. I've already liked, subscribed, and left a comment on YouTube. P.S. Go Green to Gage, to a fellow Spartan from Texas.
Wow. All
Let's
the way
go.
from Texas.
Let's
all the way
go.
from one of the worst states in the union. Last review here, They Don't Miss by Moises T. They say, a leftist political podcast hosted by two white men from Michigan that speak about the evils of our society with base takes and correct opinions, by all accounts, shouldn't exist. But against all odds, and despite capitalism, Jeremy and Gage come back every week and entertain the audience with news in a way that doesn't make you weep into your pillow at the state of society. Found you guys on TikTok, binged all of your episodes.
Damn.
And while you guys help me get through the work week as I work evening shifts and sit next to a coworker who listens to Tim Pool, I'm putting a stop to it. Instead, I'm signing up for the Patreon to get my episodes early so I can play them while I'm at my girlfriend's place and net you guys another fan. And if you're listening to this review, you should check out the Patreon too. Much love from New York City. Stay blessed.
Music to my fucking ears. That's
crazy.
So fucking whimsical. Oh my God.
And I can confirm that Moises T did become a patron, and I've got you on the thank you list at the end of the episode, because I remember I just updated the Patreon list, so we got new people down there, and Moises is one of them.
Excellent.
Hopefully I'm saying that right, but yeah.
Hit all the fucking beats on what makes an excellent review right there.
yeah. It was fairly brief. It was appreciative of us. Give us compliments.
We
Told
got
people to sign up for the Patreon.
Good bit of our data collection on where you found us.
Everything we need.
We're
really.
actually selling your data.
Yeah, this is the perfect model, the perfect prototype for how everyone's review should be. Follow Moises T's model. But I think it's time to get into the episode.
Yeah, it's time to get into some less lighthearted news.
Yeah, we're going to start off with a pretty bad news story, which you all can probably predict because this has made its way to national news coverage.
Oh, yeah.
It is a issue, it is a topic of police brutality, so trigger warning if you're sensitive to that kind of stuff. But we are talking about Tyre Nichols and his, just the case of police brutality and the beating that he suffered and eventually died from.
Particularly fucking brutal case, which is like, obviously all cases of police brutality are brutal, but this one's just like so fucking out there and egregious.
Right. Yeah, no, it's especially bad. So
oh God.
I'm going to go through the timeline of events here just so we can establish exactly what we're talking about. I don't want to spend too much time on it because just about every streamer and news channel has covered exactly what's happened, how it went down, the events that led up to it, that kind of thing. But I just kind of want to get a baseline for us, and then we'll talk more about specifics like structural issues with the police, different optical takes that people have had. So if you don't want to sit through hearing about exactly what happened, if that kind of thing, you just can't handle hearing that kind of thing, sensitive to
trigger.
it, feel free to skip through. But as for a timeline of events, on January 7th, 29-year-old Tyre Nichols was pulled over in a regular traffic stop in Memphis, Tennessee, and eventually beaten to death, as we all know now. I believe it was for reckless driving. That's what the Memphis Police Department said at first.
From what I had heard, I thought it was that one of the officers said that they saw him doing reckless driving the day before and recognized the car and pulled him over. But I don't know, because there's also a lot of like weird rumors going around about it too. You know how just like big stories get.
Yeah. So I did hear reckless driving. I didn't know that there was the caveat of I saw it yesterday.
That's something that I just like heard.
But then the police chief later said that she was not sure why he was pulled over. She hasn't been able to find any real reason.
Yeah, because he was coming home from the park from taking sunset photos at the park.
Wow, that is like the most
nicest
civilian thing to do
that you could do.
That's like the most civilian possible thing.
Yeah.
Nice. Nichols was pulled over by a member of a specialized unit called the Scorpion Unit. More on that in a little bit.
Like, they're just naming them violent
it's just
things
evil,
and are confused when violence happens.
So he was pulled over by a member of the Scorpion Unit, which we'll get to in a little bit. Officers, I think it was 2 at first, then forcefully pinned Nichols to the ground, and you can hear Nichols in the footage saying, okay, I'm on the ground, I'm just trying to get home, like he's complying. Apparently, at one point, I don't know if it was here or later on, officers were shouting contradictory orders and commands. So he just couldn't follow them, obviously. He was getting confused. So he's trying to comply. He's on the ground. Officers then pepper spray him and tase him, and Nichols is able to break free, and he runs down the street towards his mother's house because he was less than a mile away from his mother's house, I think, at this point. Yeah. He's just like down the street from her house. He's running away because officers, like, he doesn't know what's going on. Officers are like being pretty violent against him already. They tried to pepper spray and tase him, as I said. I think that actually one of the officers managed to pepper spray themselves, but Nichols still got away, like, without harming anybody. At this moment,
that's just the pepper spraying yourself thing is just
crazy, so
fucking insane, right? Yeah. It's like we as a, not even as a society, like if you're the right winger here in this situation, if you're the Blue Lives Matter, back the blue crowd, now, you're thinking like, oh yeah, law enforcement totally deserves to have all these weapons, yet they can't even stop themselves from pepper spraying themselves, making themselves more angry, and just escalating the situation entirely by themselves.
Yeah. I don't have any stats on this, but you gotta wonder how often it is that cops either misuse weapons, misfire a certain weapon, or something like that. Because there was a recent case of this a couple of months ago. I think someone got convicted for it a couple of months ago, where she meant to pull out a taser, she pulled out a gun and shot somebody.
We covered that. We covered that. Was that earlier last year?
Yeah,
that was about this time last year, I think.
You just gotta wonder how often that kind of thing happens, where a cop like hits a friend, hits themselves, misfire something they weren't trying to use, like. Again, I don't have stats on it to back it up, any empirical evidence, but I don't know.
Yeah.
Seems like kind of a common thing for people who are supposed to be highly trained. The initial officers then called in backup to catch Nichols, who is now fleeing on foot. Tyre Nichols fleeing on foot. Less than half a mile down the road from the initial stop, Nichols is caught. They tackled him, take him to the ground. There's now 5 officers at the scene. And this is where they have him pinned. They're pepper spraying him multiple times. I guess to get back at him for them fucking it up previously. And throughout this whole time,
to get back at him for them
messing it up. Exactly. The officers are kicking him, beating him with batons. They're throwing punches. They stand him up at one point and then just throw a couple haymakers at him. They are just,
they prop him up so that they can get better hits on him. Which is fucking insane, right? Because like, as a police, like you'd think like, okay, it is reasonable to think that like there are times where a cop needs to restrain someone. Yeah. Completely reasonable to think that.
Of course.
Obviously, like very intuitive, and it makes sense. But the moment that you have someone restrained, all strikes should be done. Yeah. Not allowed. Yeah. If there's a strike that comes in after you have someone restrained, detained, whatever, that's unnecessary. That is unnecessary force. That's aggravated assault.
And this case specifically is especially crazy to me because they can't say that he had a gun. He didn't have a weapon. Yeah. They can't say that he was violent towards the police officers. He was running away. And you can see this in the footage afterwards, after they beat him within an inch of his life and he's on the ground bleeding before paramedics arrive. They're like trying to justify it afterwards, what they just did. They're saying, oh, I saw him reach for your gun, or oh, he was trying to hit back at you. And he clearly wasn't, because there was a camera right next to them when they were doing this.
It's like they can always say, oh, he was reaching for my gun.
Always, every time. And they
because it's right there. Yeah. It's right there.
Yeah. So at this point, I mean, there's not real analysis we can offer. They were just beating him to death.
Yeah.
That's really all that this was. And these officers beat him to death, critically injured him within 3 minutes of capturing him, of tackling him to the ground, and then the 5 officers show up. He didn't die there, but he was on the ground, immobile, waiting for medics to arrive. And I didn't know this until I looked into some of the news reports, but apparently Nichols remained against the car, propped up after he just gotten beaten for 16 minutes until he received any care.
What?
They were just waiting on medics to arrive, and a full 24 minutes before an ambulance arrived to take him away.
Which is also crazy because aren't they supposed to be trained in basic first aid? Aren't they supposed to supply basic first aid to any perpetrator as long as the threat is subdued?
Yeah, I thought so. Because I mean, it might vary state to state, but...
True, because that was a big thing in a couple of the cases last year that we covered.
Yeah.
Is that they, like, shot someone and then they just left them there.
Uh-huh.
Like, what do you expect?
Which is crazy, because it's like, if we're a land of laws, we don't just execute people.
Yeah.
We make sure that people can have their due process. We're not just killing people unless it is 100% absolutely necessary. They're going to hurt somebody else. Clearly was not the case here. Because he was just sitting there, and then he's taken to a hospital where he dies 3 days later from severe bleeding caused by the beating that he endured. Yeah. So all 5 of the officers, they were all black officers, and they were all fired almost immediately,
which was
maybe
crazy.
Like a week or so after. Then they've been charged with second-degree murder, official misconduct, kidnapping, and a federal civil rights investigation is underway.
Yeah.
So just about everything you can imagine happened, which is good, unabashedly good.
What should happen every time anything like this happens.
Exactly. And I will say real quick, and this is the take that just about everybody's had,
okay,
or at least everybody on the left, for the cops to be immediately charged and fired before any footage released, you knew it was going to be bad.
Oh, yeah.
Like, that does not happen.
Oh, yeah.
Ever. I mean, Derek Chauvin killed George Floyd in the daylight, and he didn't get fired or suspended or whatever for a while.
Yeah.
It took quite a while.
You could watch the whole entire act go down. Like, that was a viral video.
And I would only argue that he actually got convicted because there was such a massive uprising throughout the entire nation to ensure that he was brought to justice.
And wasn't the thing with the Derek Chauvin video, it wasn't like police body cam footage that released. Wasn't it someone who recorded it and posted it online?
Yeah.
Exactly. The only reason this video, because we didn't even get body cam footage, correct? We got the street cam.
For this one?
Yeah.
There was body cam footage. You couldn't really see anything.
Because they're up on him.
Yeah, because they're moving a lot. But there was street light footage, which is pretty clear.
You can see the whole entire thing.
Like, yeah, they're doing it in the light. Like, I mean, obviously it's not like HD or anything, but you can tell what's going on.
An absolute fucking power trip, just like all of these instances are.
Yeah, exactly. So that's the first take on this. Now, of course, the immediate response here, because all of the officers were black, the victim was also black. The immediate response is that, sure, maybe this is a case of police brutality, but systemic racism, you can't say this was motivated by race, right? There's no systemic racism here because all the officers were black, the victim was black. How can they be racist? And that's the take that we've seen from the right for basically the entirety of this news coverage.
That's the take I've seen from every big right-wing pundit is, wow, that video's bad. Like, I haven't really seen the pundits try and defend the cops in this situation, probably because they don't like black people.
Yeah, of course.
I mean, the cops don't deserve defense, but like in keeping with their tradition, probably because they don't like black people, that's why they weren't trying to defend the cops. The most prominent take is this was absolutely unjustified. These cops should face due process. I still back the blue though. LOL, how is this about racism?
It's the bad apples argument, right?
Yep.
Like just like you mentioned earlier, it is yes, this was awful. They should be fired. They should be maybe prosecuted. I don't even know if they're going that far. But, they should be fired. This is a terrible thing to do. But, a few bad apples don't spoil the bunch. Back the blue. I still support the police.
Yep.
That's basically their line of reasoning. And here's a couple of things. So, first of all, the Scorpion Unit, right? From the New York Times, they said, quote, the Scorpion Unit had been designed to patrol areas of the city struggling with persistent crime and violence. That may seem fine, but these kinds of police units, and this isn't just a Memphis thing, this exists throughout the country, these kinds of police units exist solely to target impoverished communities, which are, of course, disproportionately black and brown. The more you police certain areas, the more you send units into certain areas, the more crime you will find, the more people you will arrest, the more interactions you will have, and subsequently, the more people will be brutalized by police officers. These units exist solely to prey on those communities. The take here is that, it's not systemic racism when things like the Scorpion Unit exist solely to prey on black people or black and brown people in these communities. That is a symptom of systemic racism.
Yeah, it's absolutely a byproduct. Even if these cops in their action did not have like an interpersonal racist motive. Even if they didn't have internalized black people and wanted to distance themselves from their blackness by doing this, they are still operating within a system that is built upon racism. And that's why this is still a byproduct of white supremacy.
And they absolutely could have had internalized racism.
Oh, 100%, yeah.
And I think some people on the left have astutely pointed out that the right has no problem saying that there are self-hating men or self-hating white people.
White guilt.
Yeah, they have no problem saying like, oh, well, you just hate white people. You're just, guilty about your own race. But when it comes to this, they're like, can't believe for a second that a black person could hate other black people, having some sort of internalized racism towards their own group.
Yeah.
Like, come on. Like, they are just fronting here. And we know that they're just fronting. But yeah, the thing here is that when it comes to police systems and when it comes to the people that carry out policies, so the structures that guide institutions like the police are depersonalized, right? Yeah. There is no individual that represents a certain policy. When you have something like a Scorpion unit or different types of searches you can do or different types of warrants you can get from a judge, these are all systems and policies and practices that are set up well before any of the current police officers are there. These are completely depersonalized systems. But you have individuals carrying out these systems. And there's two things. One, the systems often try to isolate your stereotypes and encourage you to use them, which is why we see things like white officers killing black people a lot of the time.
Yeah.
But we also have the fact that these structures are specifically designed and stem from systemically racist solutions to problems. You know what I'm saying?
Sure. Yeah.
When it comes to things like crime, because like, think about, to make it more clear, to give an example, think about the war on drugs in the 1980s. These were policies that weren't necessarily made with black people, like in the policies itself. It didn't say like, go arrest more black people, but it targeted cops towards more specific areas. It gave greater prosecutions for certain drugs and had the effect of harming the black community pretty disastrously.
Culturally, it demonized certain behaviors that they knew previously to be, quote, more associated criminally with the black community.
And these new policies and practices were carried out by the police. The police have always, throughout American history, throughout the history of other countries as well, have always served as a mode of social control. And that mode of social control is often used to direct racialized outcomes. And that's why it doesn't really matter if these cops that beat Tyre Nichols to death, these 5 cops, are in fact racist themselves towards black people, or if they, feel that all races are equal or whatever it may be. What matters is that the system of policing itself is meant to produce racialized outcomes. And we've known this for as long as we've had police.
And it's like you can see the cascade here so clearly, right? You get a community, you push them into impoverished neighborhoods, you hyper segregate them and make sure that they're poor. We know that poverty motivates crime, that poverty creates more crime. People on the right or even liberals say, oh, there's a lot of crime. Maybe we need to up police presence. Upping police presence by virtue of there being more cops starts to find more crime that otherwise would have gone unnoticed. And they say, hey, look, there's more crime. Maybe we should up the cops more. Maybe we should up the presence more. And they say, okay, let's up it. Clearly this upping isn't working because we're finding more crime. So let's name a new Scorpion unit. A unit named specifically for violence.
It sounds like a gang.
It's so fucking LARPy to call a unit of police a Scorpion unit. What is this, Call of Duty? Come on, it's now. Like, it could literally just be the inner city patrol. No, even that carries negative connotations to it.
And it's like, oh, the Scorpion unit beat someone to death. I wouldn't have expected that.
Like, come on. It's like, it's almost like these units are named so that you it's not almost like they're named so you expect violence. They are named so that you expect violence from them. And so when they carry out violence and when just during their regularly daily operations, when they carry violence and when they go too far beyond what violence is acceptable from the police culturally, you can say, I mean, come on, like, isn't that kind of like, they have plausible deniability.
Right, exactly. And the thing here is that you can trace from the beginning of police all the way up until now a line of racism through the institution itself, right? Police first formed out of slave patrols. There wasn't really an organized institution of policing until slavery until slavery was abolished, slave patrols went away, and police formed out of them. And that doesn't necessarily mean that police are inherently racist. Like, if that was the only thing on the radar that indicated racism, you couldn't make a solid argument. Things can change over time,
For sure.
But police formed out of slave patrols, and then they were used to enforce segregation in the South. and then they were used for the war on drugs, and they've been used for racist policies ever since. Their existence is solely to act. One, it's to act as a sort of facade that the state is taking care of you, right? Like, you can find this everywhere else as well. But it's also, it is a mode of social control. It's to keep people in certain classes, in certain conditions, such that the classes above aren't bothered.
Yeah.
And that's really what the police are for. That's the purpose they serve. They don't reduce crime.
Oh, no.
We know that police don't get rid of crime.
There's such a clear line to all of the fucking issues we see today. And right-wingers and liberals are just willfully fucking ignorant of it.
Right.
Willfully ignorant. Because again, in 2022, cop police budgets higher than they ever were before.
Yeah. And that does bring me to my main critique here, is that police don't stop crime. And we need to stop expecting them to stop crime. Crime is a problem for which police just cannot solve.
There are so many other solutions that we need to take into consideration when thinking about what stops people from committing crime. And these solutions don't start after someone has already started stealing from Walmart.
Exactly.
After someone has already committed murder. After someone, after being on this earth for 16 years and raised in abject poverty, goes and joins a gang and starts slinging drugs. These solutions start before they're even born. These solutions need to be uplifting the generations that are here now so that generations in the future aren't inclined to do crime.
Exactly. Because once you get to that point, you've already lost the plot.
Exactly.
Because what is it going to do if somebody feels like they need to steal from Walmart or they need to deal drugs or whatever else it may be? If they feel like they need to do that, then what is arresting them for 3 months and then throwing them back out on the street going to do? They're either going to be in the same condition they were before, or they're going to be in a worse spot and have to do even worse things just to get by.
Often strictly worse.
Exactly.
Often felons just in a strictly worse position.
And now they're disenfranchised. They can't apply to a lot of jobs. They can't vote. Exactly. And it's like, how do we expect people to get by if that's the kind of condition we're going to force them into?
And we're not even rehabilitating them during that stay away from society.
Yeah.
We're just punishing them. There's no such thing as justice in this country.
Right. And it's like we need to stop expecting police to be the solution to crime here.
Yeah.
It's not going to happen. Without really understanding why crime happens, we're never going to get to a solution that can actually make it so less people are exposed to crime, less people are pushed into a life of crime. Police just exist on the back end and often don't even reduce crime rates anyway.
And this is completely separate from the most bare bones critique that, like, if I was murdered, I'm already murdered before the cops get there.
Yeah.
I'm already fucking dead.
Yeah.
Nothing that they can do except maybe start looking for the guy.
Yeah.
Maybe open up a new task force that can go and start working on this. And detective work is like fine. It's necessary. It's needed in a society, right? But they're not stopping crimes. If someone comes and fucking breaks into my house and steals from me, they're gone before the fucking cops get here.
Yeah. And it's like, imagine, you don't even have to imagine this. The kind of behavior that we see out of American police officers are the exact thing that U.S. politicians, usually on the right, fearmonger about when they're talking about China or Russia or socialist states.
Absolutely.
How they behave is almost exactly how they describe socialist states to behave. They're killing people. They're, destroying communities. They're ripping people apart. They're keeping people in poverty. Like, this is, like, I don't understand how we can say that any of these other countries are doing bad things, which they are in some cases, and then say, like, oh, yeah, we're doing great. Back the blue.
Literally perfect.
Yeah.
I bleed blue, baby.
Exactly. We would support, or the right would support police when they enforce social control in this country, but when they're doing it in another country, that's when it's bad. It's wholly inconsistent and immoral, I will add.
Well, yes.
Totally immoral. But I want to address a couple lines of argumentation that I've seen from the right.
Okay.
It's the same kind of rhetoric we always get. The just comply, the police. Not all cops are bad. Bad apples argument. The why was he running? That's been a big one for this.
Yeah.
So all of these arguments really stem from the same place. I don't think we even need to bother going through each of them, but I just want to note that whenever people say stuff like that, it is wholly an attempt to misdirect and justify this kind of insane behavior from the police. It's an attempt to individualize the situation to preclude any kind of argument or discourse about the structures that produce this kind of police behavior.
Yeah.
Because we see this all the time. We see innocent people die at the hands of the police, whether they're white or black or any other race. And whenever that happens, right-wingers will say, oh, well, what were they doing specifically? Were they grabbing for the gun? Do they have a gun themselves? Did they try to run away? Whatever it is. And that's besides the point, because we're talking about larger structures that lead to more people interacting with the police. getting beaten by the police, injured by the police, or eventually dying at the hands of the police.
And even if we're going to talk about personal motives, why someone wouldn't, quote, comply with a police officer, when we live in a world where when you hear the words routine traffic stop, you have to wince in preparation for the dead body that comes after that. What are you supposed to think when you're a black man who gets pulled over?
Right.
What are you supposed to think when you're a black man that gets pulled over and all you see all the time are just cops in general brutalizing you?
Yeah.
Pulling you over for fucking no reason for a routine traffic stop.
Yeah.
The routine traffic stop and dead body shouldn't be coupled in the way that they're coupled today in the fucking news cycle.
And that's just besides the point, even to the fact that, like, if police can kill innocent people or people that haven't committed a crime that warrants their death, who are they protecting? If you can die at the hands of the police and you've done nothing wrong or were running away because you were afraid that a police officer was going to kill you, who are they protecting? It's not American citizens.
Who does it protect to chase after and shoot the fucking guy who's running away because he was scared of getting a traffic ticket?
Right.
Even if someone was pulled over for running a red.
Yeah.
It's something as simple as running a red, and they get out and run because they don't want a ticket.
Mm-hmm.
Who are you protecting by going and chasing after them and brutalizing them?
Take it a step further. Even say, like, some person is pulled over by the police, they run the plates, and they realize he has a warrant for his arrest. And he knows this, for drug dealing or something like that. And this dude runs away. What social good is there in executing him?
Literally.
There is none. It doesn't
still
protect
got the
anybody.
Warrant. If you got him here, you'll get him again.
It's not protecting anybody. It's not serving any social good. It's not providing for the general welfare. In fact, it's just hurting people in general.
I feel no safer when I flip on the news and I hear, oh, another routine traffic stop has got bad. In fact, I feel less safe. I feel more scared of when a cop gets behind me, just not even someone who's in a situation where I'd be more likely to be brutalized when a cop is behind me on I-75. It's like, oh, fuck, dude.
Right, exactly.
It's ridiculous.
Now, there's also a line of argument I want to address from the left that I haven't seen that much. I'll be honest. I think
like
most
the
people have had
left?
good takes. No, like our left.
Oh, okay.
I haven't seen it that much, so it's no way indicative of like the majority of people or anything like that. But I've just seen some people saying like, well, what solutions do leftists even really have? Like, it'll be people on the left that often make, the gatekeepy responses to whatever issue is going on. And they're saying, well, you're talking about this was bad. Police shouldn't be able to do this. They shouldn't have this kind of power over people regardless of race. Yeah. And, you're just saying this over and over, but you offer no real solutions. And I want to address this and say there's a number of things you could do that don't necessarily abolish the police if that's not the goal we're trying to get to.
So many things you could do.
But would make police so much less dangerous in this country. Beyond just reducing budgets, right?
Yeah.
You could do things like amend or abolish certain practices like scorpion units, or things like consent searches that prey on people not having a full understanding of what their liberties are. You could re-examine certain warrants like no-knock warrants that just escalates tensions. And also, it just comes along with reorienting how we manage crime in general. Again, police are not the solution for crime. They don't do anything to solve crime.
And some of these things we've already kind of implemented, right? Like, I know in a lot of precincts they aren't allowed to engage in like car chases anymore because they recognize that car chases are actually just more of a danger to the public than the person actually running away in the car for, again, running a red light. Something like that. So why can't we extend that to a routine traffic stop where someone tries to run from a cop for something so fucking innocuous?
Right.
They're scared. It's a reaction that people have.
Yeah.
You can note that they're running. You have all their fucking information already. Note it. Put out another warrant. Do whatever you can. These are all options that you can do in the very short term that work within a system of policing.
It annoys me when I see people that are presumably leftists like us saying like, oh, well, the left's not offering any solution. Like, you're kind of just running defense for the right.
Literally.
Like, there's so many solutions that we could do. And, it's one thing to say the Democrats won't implement it. They certainly won't.
Yeah.
They'll use this kind of thing to their political benefit to say, oh, yeah, we need to reform policing somehow. And then they just give more money to the police.
We need to train cops more so they aren't pepper spraying themselves.
Right, exactly. And it's like, who has more training than a specialized unit, to be honest? But also, it's like there's tons of solutions we can invest in, and just because you don't see them doesn't mean that they're not there.
Yeah.
And it doesn't mean that us saying that Tyre Nichols shouldn't have been beaten is somehow then unnecessary.
Like, how the fuck do you land yourself on the left and have that kind of take?
Yeah.
Like,
It's like you yourself
don't understand.
You yourself don't have the solutions, therefore they don't exist. Like
you've never thought critically about any of this.
Yeah.
Therefore, no one else can, and the right are actually right. And you want to live under the boot. You want to live in submission for the rest of your life to a occupying force.
And I reject this idea that you can't critique certain systems, offer your take while not necessarily having the solution.
Yeah.
Like that's silly. We should be able to critique things, not necessarily have the solution. Then maybe somebody hears it and thinks of a solution.
Because
that's how discourse
naturally,
works.
the critique always becomes before the solution.
Right.
You don't come up to solutions to things you don't see as problems.
Mm-hmm. We build upon each other's work.
How are you a leftist and arrive at that?
Yeah.
Well, like you're not. Like you're not principled. You're a leftist in like you are one of those people who put the BLM sticker on your laptop to say that you're involved in social movements.
Right.
Like that's who you are. You are one of those leftists that follows trends.
Yeah.
And got here because you think that it's trendy, because there are people like that.
And it's like individual leftists or like people with Twitch streams or podcasts or, the media type leftists.
Yeah.
If they're critiquing an issue and they don't have a solution, like that's fine. Like they're not the ones doing the movement. They're not the ones petitioning the government. They don't have to have a policy platform.
Let's do discourse as a community and come up with that solution.
Right. And it's good to offer solutions. We try to do it here.
Exactly. We just did.
If we don't always, like that doesn't mean that the discourse is therefore, useless.
Yeah. I'm not just bitching to bitch.
Right.
Like
exactly.
These things are real
Especially when it comes to the problem of policing. Like one of the easiest things to be on the left for.
No, for real. It's like we talk like the issue of capitalism. Like, yeah, I'm not going to come up with a new economic system that completely meshes and that everyone loves.
Right.
However, there are people way smarter than me that can do that. And there's a discourse that we can have that gets us there.
Yeah. And my final take here before we move on is that police exist in a sort of social function that is to obviously police the public, right?
Yeah.
It's in the name. But also they exist with almost infinitely more power than you do in your day-to-day interactions.
Oh, strictly infinitely more power than you do.
In the case of Tyre Nichols may not necessarily be one of interpersonal racism.
Yeah.
Of course, structural racism may play a role, systemic racism, and how the policies were crafted and who they're intended to oppress. But also beyond that, policing as a social function is one of asymmetrical power. Mm-hmm. And even if you exclude all racism from the conversation, if you say, if you detach it completely, if we deduce that, there's no structural racism that can be attached to this system, police still exist in a more powerful position than you do. And they can functionally, because we don't regulate them that much, do whatever they want to you.
Yeah.
And they often get away with it. This case is exceptional because they immediately got charged and fired and, they're going to hopefully face some amount of accountability.
Which is insane that's part of what makes this case exceptional.
But it's not the norm.
Facing punishment.
Right. It's not the norm.
Yeah.
Police can almost find any reason to do, and this bears out in like Supreme Court decisions.
Qualified immunity.
In laws that have been made about the police, they functionally have immunity over almost everything that they do.
They literally have immunity to do anything that has been. What exactly is the line with qualified immunity? It's like anything that has been done that an officer got away with before, you can get away with now.
Right.
Some shit like that.
Something weird. And like Supreme Court decisions have made it super vague what police are allowed to do. Like they've made the criteria like you feel that there's a risk to others or yourself. Like you could say that about any situation.
Yeah, I think qualified immunity, it's like you're immune to a situation unless an officer has previously been ruled like as doing something bad in it. Because I know there are famous examples where like a cop has let a canine unit out on someone and it's bit them and done severe bodily harm to them.
Right.
But there have been minute differences in the location and the environment that it's happened at. And because of those differences in location, they technically qualified for qualified immunity despite the officer beforehand being charged for that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And qualified immunity is basically the tagline there.
Even if we remove it from any critiques of, structural racism, even if we remove it from like socialist critiques of capitalism and how police interact with economic systems, police exist to have more power over you and enforce a set of laws that may or may not be to your benefit. And you should question a system that requires coercion to exist.
Yeah.
Again, even if you take away all those previous critiques that we made, this is still an instance of 5 police officers beating someone to death because they thought they could get away with it because they perceived themselves to almost be deities in the way that they would be treated.
It's also insane, right? Because getting into another bit of like right-wing rhetoric that you hear whenever police brutality incidents come out is that, well, actually, police are just going to be scared to do their jobs and no one's going to want to be a cop anymore. Fucking where? It seems like they're not scared enough to do their jobs.
Yeah.
If they're going out and doing this shit and thinking they're going to get away with it.
Right. Like you're supposed to be...
Who's scared? I'm scared.
You're supposed to be like a public servant, right?
Yeah.
Like you're supposed to like serve the community. But that kind of culture I don't think exists really at any police precinct, police department anywhere.
Absolutely not. Their presence actively scares the community.
And that's another thing that I want to address really quickly. Just in case, I know we don't have like people on the right watching, but it's something I want to address in case you ever find yourself talking to somebody on the right. They'll often say like if you ever say ACAB or, you know, like the system is bad or whatever it may be, they will immediately take that to mean that you literally mean that all cops are bad, all cops are bastards.
Yeah.
But of course, that's not what we mean. There are individual police officers that are good people.
For sure.
But the point is that the system of policing is such that they enforce unjust laws onto marginalized, historically oppressed groups and do little to fight for reform and therefore produce outcomes that are harmful to those groups. And therefore the system of policing is one that is bastardized and one that makes bad all of the potentially good people that may be in it.
It's crazy because when they make that argument, they're jumping the gun so heavily. They hear all cops are bad and think that cop is an innate part of your identity, as if you can't just stop being a cop. Because the issue is the moment you put on that uniform and you go to work, you are complicit in an unjust white supremacist system that is actively causing harm to people basically every day.
Yeah, empirically, you can find the data on this.
It is causing harm to people every day.
You can point not only to like the more intangible examples of how people feel like mentally, psychologically affected by the police, but there's like empirical examples, real historical examples of police not that long ago enforcing discriminatory laws against people and still today. And that system itself is what motivates this kind of bad behavior. Not that any of the cops are individually bad, although some of them certainly are.
Absolutely.
A lot of them certainly are.
Absolutely.
But the system itself necessitates this kind of behavior because the job itself requires a sort of violence, requires a sort of discrimination in your behavior. And that's why structural critiques are always going to be better.
And it's even aside from the blatant just job description requiring violence, right? It is so hard to separate yourselves from things that you have been culturally programmed into, like the myth of 1350 and the crime statistic rhetoric and shit like that. You have to work so hard to unlearn those implicit biases that have been ingrained in you by virtue of growing up in America. Right? Like, and that's something that's hard to do, to get rid of that. And you're taking someone who's never been trained to think about any of that ever in any critical capacity and expecting them to dish out their job just justly.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's that because, you know, they're taught to shoot before they get shot. You know, make sure you go home. You know, you're not trying to save anybody. You're trying to protect yourself first. But there's also the fact that, like I mentioned earlier, a lot of police practices before and even still today intend to play off internalized stereotypes that you have. So while some officers may not be explicitly racist and say they hate black people, they may have some negative biases, as you mentioned, cultural biases towards certain groups. And when these policies say, you know, well, you should investigate this neighborhood more often because they are more crime-ridden, etc., they're more likely to go after people of marginalized communities.
For sure.
And that's a way that they play off individual stereotypes. And not even to mention the kind of structural problems that there are with the police. And
like when you don't understand a community that you've been tasked with protecting and serving, you're going to think that everyone in that community fits a description. And that's something that we see happens all the fucking time.
Yeah, you're like an occupying force.
Exactly. Exactly. When you live in the Chicago suburbs and you go and fucking patrol the inner city of Chicago, you are an occupying force in that place. You are there to do harm.
Yeah. Like, again, if you can kill innocent civilians as a police officer and not face any problems, who are you protecting? Yeah. It's not the American population. It's not the community that you're in. It's not anybody else. You're protecting a system of social maintenance, of social control. And I'm not for that.
I'm anti that.
Speaking of another thing I'm not for, the Florida Department of Education.
Bad.
They've been popping off this week.
Fucking go.
They've been going out. I have two stories specifically, but I'm sure there's even more.
Two?
I have two stories in here. Both are kind of related to racism. The first one more so.
Yeah,
certainly.
The AP African American Studies one?
Yeah, that's the one that we're going to get into. And I just want to start off with a quote from NPR. That's how we're going to start the story. Quote, Florida's Department of Education, under the leadership of Republican Governor Ron DeSantis, rejected an advanced placement course on African American studies.
Oh, yeah.
That's how this story starts off, with them just outright rejecting an AP course, which is supposed to be like a college level course on African American studies.
Just like fucking wild one, because like, again, them jumping the gun. I don't know, like, you have to choose to take an AP course.
It's an elective.
Purely an elective. AP courses, never required.
No.
They cannot be required. They're not a part of the common education.
Like, you take your U.S. American history class.
Yeah.
And you get all of, the whitewash history that they want you to get. And then AP whatever can be your own elective. You can look into it as you want.
Sometimes the AP courses are actively discouraged, like in that you have to like apply to get into them.
Yeah.
By no means is just anyone taking the AP African American Studies class.
Not even to note that AP African American Studies, it would be exactly like something you'd see in college.
Yeah.
African American Study, like that is maybe almost verbatim what a college course would be. You know what I mean? Like you see those kinds of courses in college as history electives literally everywhere.
All the time. HIS 201.
Because people specialize in that stuff because it's a specific knowledge area that people like to know about.
And it's also just like, it's African American history.
Yeah.
Like that's it. It's history.
But anyway, getting into the story, it is important to note that this wasn't going to be like a thing implemented into every Florida school. Right now, College Board, which is, I think, the organization that runs AP courses, they have just been looking to implement this new course, and it's basically trying to go on a pilot trial run in a bunch of different states, Florida being one of them, and like one high school. And it was rejected by the Board of Education under the Stop Woke Act, actually, that we talked about before.
There's no fucking reason.
So Ron DeSantis and his team rejected it on the grounds that it was, quote, politically indoctrinating the youth, because of course. And in a statement from Brian Griffin, who is Ron DeSantis' press secretary, he said, quote, as submitted, the course is a vehicle for a political agenda and leaves large, ambiguous gaps that can be filled with additional ideological material, which we will not allow.
Deciding to enrich my mind with an elective, deciding to enrich my mind is indoctrination.
They, of course, also claimed that it was critical race theory. In this course because black is exactly. So what's actually in this course, you might ask? From NPR, they said, quote, the course will explore the origins of the African diaspora to Reconstruction, the Harlem Renaissance, the Civil Rights Movement, and then some. It will also examine historical trailblazers like Valerie Thompson, a scientist who invented the illusion transmitter. So it's really exactly what you would expect, right?
It's history.
It's history told through the lens of what African American people experienced here. What black people had experienced throughout
and it's like a lot of this are
history
things,
of America.
A lot of these things are things you would cover in a regular fucking history class, which I understand that right-wingers don't like, but it's insane that they do like them, plus the addition of the African diaspora to Reconstruction. That, and then focusing on key like black figures that have gone historically unrecognized.
Exactly.
Like if you remember that movie Hidden Figures about the black NASA scientists, the black women that actually helped us land on the moon.
Yeah,
did some amazing things. I swear to God, if that came out today, you'd have people protesting outside saying that this is woke propaganda. This is CRT.
It reinforces our theory that woke now is just black.
No, yeah.
Or woke is insert any marginalized group that they want to use a euphemism for and not explicitly say like a slur. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like that's all it is right now. It's like woke means bad.
I don't understand. I don't fucking get it anymore. It's getting to the point where it's becoming even more absurd than it was before.
Exactly. Yeah. And like that's honestly the extent of the news coverage there. Like that's the extent of the story is like they just rejected it because they don't want students to have an elective where they could learn about history, the history of African American people in this country.
Like,
that's it.
What large ideological gaps are there when you're talking about the Harlem Renaissance and the explosion of culture?
Yeah.
Like,
well, I mean, I have a theory.
Oh, it's that black music is bad.
Well, I mean, I think it goes beyond that and it goes a bit deeper than that. I think that they want to be able to teach that all progress that has been associated with, black liberation or the civil rights movement or whatever else it may be, wasn't motivated by the struggles of black people, but rather the white man liberated them.
It was gifted to them by white people.
That's what I think it is. It's not just whitewashing. It is
the white savior.
Purposefully retelling history in such a way that makes it so white supremacy seems invisible.
Exactly. It's ideological to say that the struggles of Dr. Martin Luther King and Malcolm X and the radical acts that they performed led to black liberation. It was actually the Civil Rights Act.
Yes.
That's
right.
That was the good. That's the thing we should focus on. It's just the act.
I mean, you'll see them have this taken other places, like how they would say, the British Empire saved India. Despite like starving, doing a massive famine.
Didn't Dennis Prager say that the British Empire brought language to India?
Yes.
Oh my God.
Charlie Kirk recently, I don't know if this was recently or a long time ago, but he said that like white people were the ones to end slavery. The West ended slavery. It's like, brother, who was doing slavery?
It's not the struggle of the slaves for liberation. It's Abraham Lincoln ended slavery, and then racism ended in 1964.
Right. And it's like, this is an AP course, right? This is College Board. It's not some leftist organization.
Yeah.
You know that they wouldn't give like a Marxist tint to it. They wouldn't talk about critical race theory.
Absolutely not.
They would talk about the struggles. It would be like a liberal course. That's all it would be.
And that is also, despite the fact that you take any fucking sociology class in college and you are talking about Marx or you are talking about Marxist theorists, not because they are trying to indoctrinate you into socialism, but because Marx and his ideas are the foundation of modern sociology.
Yeah, no, like that's the thing is when we're talking about these like AP courses or big courses on, you know, historical matters, sociological matters, you have to try to exclude Karl Marx.
Literally.
Like, you have to make an active attempt. He is everywhere because his theories and his ideology was so impactful on the study of sociology.
Literally, it's the basis for modern sociology. Like
the fact that we took economics courses, required to take economics courses throughout high school, and we didn't learn once about like Marxism as a political or as the like Marxist political economy. The fact that we didn't learn about that is an omission. You know, like you had to try to not include that because he was so influential on not only economics and politics, but also, of course, sociology.
It's wild. Like I'm in an English class right now at MSU. It's English 340, Theories and Methods in Popular Culture Studies. Every single chapter of the textbook that I've read has had quotes from a Marxist sociologist, like Stuart Hall.
Yeah,
we've talked about him so much. We've talked about Marx in general. We had a whole chapter that we read about how the Industrial Revolution and capitalism have shaped the way that we see sports today. It all boils down to it.
Right, and that's not even to say that, like, Karl Marx is somehow right about everything.
That's not to say that communism is the best economic system.
Exactly. It's just that it is an important part of not only history, but also just theory and learning about things in general, to consider all ends.
Understand things.
And it's so funny to see this because they, you know, the right complains about censorship so much, and they're unironically just censoring ideas they don't like.
Yeah.
Like, this is it, right? Like, we've been raising alarm bells about, like, Texas and Florida and other Republican states banning the study of certain things or whitewashing history in a certain way, you know, not allowing certain things to be taught in the classroom. And then Florida goes and bans this AP course on African American studies, and they're doing exactly what we were raising the alarm bells about.
Oh, absolutely. It's you can't ban me off of Twitter for saying the N-word.
Right.
That's censorship, but it's not censorship when the local school board decides to ban these books.
Exactly.
Because they teach about gay people.
Right. And it's like they want to tell this version of history where white people are not, or white supremacy in general, is not responsible for the woes of black Americans in this country, but rather it liberated them from struggles like slavery or segregation or, you know, the need for voting rights, et cetera, et cetera. That it's not, you know, the white man that has kept them down, rather it's the white man that liberated them. And therefore, you know, if we put, you know, keep white people in power, allow them to whitewash and do more of whatever they want to do, that's a good thing, actually.
While the slave was propping up the economy, the slave master was in his studies surrounded by all his books because he was a very educated man, and he thought really hard about slavery and what was going on, and he said, you know what would be a better solution? Sharecropping.
Right.
And thus he liberated the slaves.
Yeah.
And slavery was over. Sharecropping was very good. and history's been settled ever
since.
They
established a commune, actually. Like, the GOP political program just can't include historical and systemic understandings of what happened to black people in this country. Because if you actually take the time to study African American history, for example, it's hard to not understand, like, yeah, we need to do some form of reparations. We like 13 years of construction wasn't enough. Or Reconstruction, it just wasn't enough. We clearly did not solve the deep systemic issues that were associated with how we oppress black people in this country. Once you learn about that, it's hard to not want to do something about it.
For sure.
And it just does not fit within the conservative ideology, the GOP political program, to ever want to do anything about that. No. So they have to ban teaching about it. They can't have future generations of people who want to solve the problem of systemic racism. Otherwise, their political program completely collapses. It dissolves.
It functionally cannot mesh with anything that they believe.
Yeah, like the conservative ideology,
insane.
It has not changed over the last several centuries.
Yeah.
It's just evolved. It's become more politically, socially acceptable. But at the core, the same ideas. They want to be able to oppress people, and they're just evil. They're just evil. Like, that's the only way you can describe them. They're just evil. It's racism extravaganza.
So fucking bad. Oh my goodness.
Talking about bad though.
Yeah.
It's 1984.
Oh.
And we're in Florida.
No.
We're talking 1984 Ministry of Truth censorship.
What did they censor?
We're talking about more book bans. So over the summer, Florida Bill HB 1467 went into effect, and this is a bill. I don't think it has like a cool code name like the Stop Woke Act.
No
like
fun
that.
acronym.
Yeah, no don't say gay.
Just a House bill.
Parental rights or fucking whatever it was. I think it was just like a regular bill, and this makes it so all books in school available for students, regardless of if it's in like a library or a personal library, like a lending library kind of situation in a classroom, they all have to be pre-approved by a media specialist trained by Florida's Department of Education.
Bro, what?
It's Ministry of Truth. Like what? Literally. It's what you can have access to in publicly funded classrooms.
Christ.
So you may be asking, what's the criteria for a book to be approved?
What is the criteria for a book?
From CNN, according to Florida's Department of Education, the selection of library materials, including classroom libraries, must be, quote, free of pornography and prohibited material under the law, suited to student needs and their ability to comprehend the material presented, and appropriate for grade level and age group. The most vague criteria you can imagine.
I was just about to say, suited for student needs?
Yes. What does that mean?
What does that mean? What students?
Yeah.
What students are we focusing on here? Because I can tell you, again, I'm going to bring it back to when we talked about Davison banning the book titled Healing Sexual Trauma. There are students who need that book.
Well, it's like even if we take out those vague pieces, right? They say it has to be free of pornography. On its face, yeah, like of course. Obviously. But what does the right consider to be pornography? If it has gay people in it, they might say it's pornography.
An anatomy textbook, pornography.
Isn't there that famous Supreme Court quote where they're like, I don't know how to define pornography, but I know it when I see it?
Obscenity.
Yeah.
It's about obscenity laws. I don't know what's obscene, but I know it when I'll see it.
Exactly.
No, you won't.
Exactly.
I think different things are obscene.
And the best part here is that if teachers, quote, knowingly distribute egregious material, they face felony charges.
What?
Felony charges.
Wait, how can they do that? I thought felony was a violation of federal law.
I don't think it has to be. I don't think it has to be. I think states can set up felony charges.
Oh, I guess that makes sense. Okay.
Right. So if they knowingly distribute egregious material, it's felony charges for a teacher, for an individual teacher. Now, of course, this is led...
So if you're gay and you're showing your kids reading the fucking Wallflowers, but you're fucked.
Yeah, this has led teachers in Florida, or I guess in the schools, some in protest, some because they were forced to. Yeah. This has led a lot of teachers to get rid of their classroom lending libraries or cover them up completely in protest because going through this process is kind of insane.
Yeah.
It's literally the Ministry of Truth. And some have been ordered by their school boards to pack up their classroom libraries to get them out, to avoid felony charges. Because they don't know what's going to be said, what's going to be determined to be bad, and what's going to be determined to be good.
Imagine not letting kids read.
Yeah. What? Yeah. And like obviously, like we said, you don't want things like pornography. You don't want things like overly violent, gory things in your children's books. But the thing that gets
common sense.
Right. The thing that gets me though is like almost every book that we read in high school had pretty sensitive material in it, right?
Oh yeah.
Like
it alluded to very sensitive material.
Catcher in the Rye was all about depression.
And it alluded to sexual misconduct.
To Kill a Mockingbird was all about racism and a black man like being beaten to death.
Yeah.
It was like Great Gatsby. There's murder.
Romeo and Juliet.
1984 is literally about violence. Like it's like so many of the books that you read have pretty sensitive material in it because that's an important part of learning about the world.
Yeah,
that's like part of your education is learning that some of the things that you see in real life can be represented in literature and more easily analyzed such that you can talk about fake topics while alluding to real things that happen in the real world.
Animal Farm.
Right.
Yeah.
Like it's like these are like Renaissance ideas. You know what I mean? Like these are very simple
things
concepts.
we figured out a long time ago.
Right, exactly. But Republicans, of course, like Ron DeSantis, have or want to implement or have implemented these very vague laws as a way to induce a sort of chilling effect. Because what do they consider to be age appropriate? What do they consider to be things that students are mentally ready to handle? Yeah. And of course, what do they consider to be pornography? Because if they just say like, oh, well, students shouldn't be learning about LGBTQ topics, then you just can't have books about that.
Especially when these things can change by the day.
Yeah.
Because again, I know it when I'll see it. And the vagueness, obviously, it's the point. Because it gets you to self-police. Mm-hmm. And that's exactly what we're seeing right now is these teachers just completely getting rid of their lending libraries. That's insane.
Well, yeah, like reading is like such an important part of brain development.
Reading is like something we're trying to get kids to do more of, but not in Florida.
But more specifically, in Florida, there was a specific book called The Bluest Eye by Toni Morrison that was banned because it was quote-unquote egregious, right? This is a book about a black girl growing up in the Great Depression. A bunch of horrible things happened. I think it talks about pedophilia at some point in the book.
Yeah.
I'm sure I've never read the book, so I'm sure it's not in like a positive light.
Also, like 1930s, I'm sure a lot of racism happened.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Now, The Bluest Eye was specifically removed because it was assigned in class to a group of students, and parents lobbied a complaint. Because in this Florida bill specifically, parents are allowed to complain about books and get them removed, which is crazy to me. So someone's parent found this book, found the sections that covered harsh topics, again, like crime, pedophilia, that sort of thing. And they reported it, got it banned, and now this book that was covering potentially important topics that students need to be aware of, because it's important to know what pedophilia is as a kid, so you don't have it done to you.
Even if like middle schoolers are reading this book, which I doubt, probably. I'm sure.
No, it was a 15-year-old girl.
Yeah, I was saying, I'm sure this is a high school class.
Yeah. So a freshman or sophomore is reading this book, and now they can't because the school took it out of the curriculum. Wow. And a quote from the Tampa Bay Times. This was from the school that it was banned at. The board member, it was some board member talking. They said, quote, "Board member Stephanie Meyer said that she did not see a problem with districts implementing the law. Students are minors," she said, "and the school must protect them from inappropriate materials. Books are not banned," she added, "just not available in schools."
Wait, guys, books aren't banned. They're just not allowed to be sold anymore or distributed.
Like, what are you talking? Like, they don't have access to them. What do you mean they're not banned? You clearly banned them.
Jesus fucking Christ, dude. It's insane. And I also think it's funny that, like, these are the same parents that go on and talk about how, like, oh, kids these days, back in my day, I would be out of my house with no cell phone from 8 in the morning till it was dark outside at night and nothing bad ever happened to me. But now kids are sissies all days and they're always on the tablet. They're always on the video game. There's nothing for us to do.
Yeah.
Like,
look at the world you created.
The same. They're the ones who they're coddling their children in such a harmful way.
Yeah.
It's nuts.
Yeah, I mean, again, it's besides the fact that we've mentioned before that like learning about sensitive topics is important growing up, so you can avoid them, be a more well-rounded person. Also, reading is just good for you, like as a kid for brain development. It's pretty important.
It's one of the best things.
So it's crazy the complete onslaught that conservatives are doing against literature, indicative of another group from the 1940s and 30s that I know about from European
that
country.
We just released an official statement about because I guess we can't say that they're all bad anymore.
We're being censored. And then we were literally censored by Twitter. Anyways. I do think it's funny, though, how Republicans will constantly fearmonger about how Democrats are censoring them, and then they'll go and do things like ban books in Florida schools. Yeah. Like, your policy platform is you want to protect free speech, you want to stop censorship, liberal censorship that is happening, and then you say, like, oh, well, you can't read this book that talks about things that I don't like. Like, that's ridiculous. Like, you couldn't read, like, you couldn't read the most celebrated, you couldn't read, like, Kurt Vonnegut in classes. You couldn't read 1984 if we applied their standards.
Let me go up to Nick Fuentes and say, oh, Nick, you didn't get banned from Twitter. I mean, well, you're not, like, banned from Twitter. Like, you can still tweet, just no one will see it and it won't show up on your profile. Yeah. And watch him not fucking flip out. Right. Because you're being facetious.
Yeah. And it's like, I do want to mention, though, like, outside of, jokes that we're making, it is funny, it's crazy, it's absurd to laugh at. But the point of laws like this, like banning books, like making it a felony charge to have books that have quote unquote egregious material,
insane.
It is meant to establish chilling effects such that teachers are too afraid to have any sort of books in their classroom about, say, LGBTQ topics because they're afraid they'll get charged with a felony and put in jail.
And it's also just like, one person is appointed to decide all of this, right?
Yeah. Even if it was a group, like Ministry of Truth, 1984.
Yeah, fucking insane. Fucking, let me make a formal complaint about the Bible.
Yeah.
All the gore that's in the Bible, all the shit that's in the Bible. Let me get that removed from school. Like, well, that's just what I mean.
That's just the thing is that even if they had a rule, say in Florida they had a rule about teaching religious texts, right, or like having kids read certain religious texts, they would be fine if it was the Bible. Well, and they would not be fine if it was the Torah, the Quran, or any other religious thing. The point
is that none of this is equally enforced. It's only instituted as a tool to oppress minorities.
Yeah, to keep students from learning and reading about LGBTQ topics, the struggles of Black people in this country, the struggles of women in this country, etc. Like, as long as it doesn't fall within, or as long as it falls within the purview of the GOP political program, they will get rid of it if they can. But say they implement a rule like no talking about certain aspects of certain, relationships, marriages, or whatever it is. If it's a straight relationship, guarantee you they will not ban it from 100%. Schools.
Again,
if it's a gay relationship, a relationship between a trans person and another person, they will absolutely ban it from schools because they'll consider it to be egregious material.
And this is something we literally saw with the Don't Say Gay bill, whereas teachers were disciplined for having pictures of them and their same-sex spouse on the table. Yet straight teachers were not disciplined for that.
That also wasn't a directive necessarily from state law. But it was the way in which Orange County interpreted the law, because they thought that the law is so vague that if we don't interpret it in this strict way that we could get punished, we could lose our funding, teachers could go to jail, and we have to avoid that. It is an attempt to design laws so vague that everyone is violating them, so you can get them at any time. Unironically, kind of like the Soviet Union.
Yeah,
like unironically.
Hold on a minute.
If everyone's always in violation, you can get them whenever you want. Like, unironically, like a lot
anything.
of
when
authoritarian
you have
regimes.
Supreme Court standards such as I'll know it when I see it, what the fuck am I supposed to do?
Yeah. How do I know if I'm in compliance with the rules that you set forth? The trick is you never know, and therefore you either don't teach things about LGBTQ people, you don't have books about black people, etc., or you try to and eventually maybe get a felony charge, maybe lose your job. Like, it's so vague that you have to opt for the safest option, which is just not teaching kids about certain things.
You have to self-police yourself into the dominant ideology. It's so insidious. It's fucking crazy.
Yeah. And I do think it's really interesting how education is always this great battleground.
Oh, yeah.
It's been for all of our lives. And I honestly think for like all of U.S. history, at the very least, education has been this battleground, this moral battleground for what kinds of things kids are taught.
So many moral panics behind education. Like, I know we were talking again in my English class. There used to be a moral panic just like about reading in general. Like, kids are reading too long. They're not spending enough time on the farm, engaged with real life. Like, these moral panics are so fucking crazy and ridiculous.
Yeah. And it's always the conservatives coming up with the most insane shit to talk about.
Oh, yeah.
Like, you're teaching kids wokeism. You're teaching kids that they need to be gay. They need to be trans. Like, nobody's doing this.
Yeah, they're transing your children as if being trans is something that's imposed onto your children and not an authentic representation of their identity.
And then, of course, the cancer that is the internet finds one example of a teacher with blue hair saying, like, oh, you should go by they, them. And then suddenly the conservative media wants to burn down, like, every school they can find. It's crazy.
It's one person that goes way too far, or it's just one person who was angry at a protest, and now they're the face on the thumbnail of every fucking right-winger's YouTube video. You know what I'm talking about?
Yes.
There's like three women.
Crying lib?
Yeah. There's like three women that are just constantly on rotation in these thumbnails, and all they did was be at a protest.
Yeah. And I do think it's very convenient that conservatives go after kids in education so much, because kids aren't going to retort any of their arguments. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, conservatives, they can offer policies that they claim will help black people, and black people can be like, oh, well, no. Like, adults can be like, this clearly won't help me. But when they go for kids aren't in the media. Kids aren't out here arguing for themselves. They don't have podcasts where they can share their ideology. They don't even have an ideology. It's a very convenient group to argue for because they won't push back against any of your ideas.
And even like middle schooler and high schoolers, because they're in the formative years of forming an ideology or forming their belief system that will guide their adult life. Like when I was 13 and fucking stupid, I used to watch like entrepreneur videos because like, fuck yeah, dude, I'm going to be just like, not Gary Vee, Ty Lopez. That was a popular guy. I'm going to be just like this fucking
dude. Ads came up all the time. Dude, how could you not?
I know, like I clicked on him once and I was like looking, I was like, yeah, dude, like I'm gonna be fucking made. I'm gonna be one of these.
My garage.
I'm gonna be one of these 15-year-olds who has like a Ferrari because I'm gonna trade so many fucking stocks. And I remember when I was like 16, I was like, yeah, I'm gonna put all my birthday money into like a stock, and I'm gonna fucking make
he would always feign intellectualism by being like, here's my two of my Ferraris, but I'm more proud of this shelf of books.
Oh my god, I know.
I've read all of them.
He'd say some cool shit like, yeah, I try to read like a book a day. No, the fuck you don't.
Yeah.
Shut the fuck up.
It's not true.
God,
not true.
God, I was so fucking stupid. But I also was 13.
Yeah, you're supposed to be stupid when you're 13.
You're supposed to be dumb.
You're supposed to be dumb when you're 13, and conservatives want to make you dumber.
Exactly. When I was 13, I already didn't have the tools. Being in public education, I already didn't have the tools to think that capitalism was bad, right? And now they're actively taking the tools that I didn't have in the first place away. What's going on?
Crazy. Anyway, moving on to our next bit of racism. Because this is Racism Palooza.
Oh, absolutely.
This is Racism Festival.
This is white on white crime.
Oh, yeah. We're talking about the Daily Wire. So this is some old news now.
It's like a week and a half ago.
We're pretty late to it at this point, but it's worth bringing up because I think it points out some just general structural critiques in the media, but also it concerns our competitors.
And it's silly,
our direct
goofy
competitors in the market.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Direct competitors. Like, I think if you had to do a valuation for Hiddo and compare it to Steven Crowder, I think we should be up there.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we'd probably compete with him if he didn't have billionaires funding him. That is.
Yeah.
That's a bit of a spoiler alert. But anyway, around a week and a half ago or so, Steven Crowder came out and he addressed a bunch of information that he released on the terms of a term sheet that was given to him by the Daily Wire, right? The Daily Wire, they wanted to bring Steven Crowder on as a contributor, as a member of their team.
Yeah.
And for those unaware that aren't terminally online like we are, Steven Crowder, right-wing grifter, commentator, yep. Daily Wire, a right-wing content company. Daily Wire is just big.
That's Ben Shapiro's shit. Well, yep. Jeremy Boring's company technically, but that's Ben Shapiro's like the head man.
Yeah, you got Ben Shapiro, Matt Walsh, Jordan Peterson now.
Brett Cooper. Jordan Peterson's with the Daily Wire.
Yeah,
now?
You didn't know that?
No.
That's why he's been going crazy about like everything.
Did
recently.
you see him post a video just cooking a A5 Wagyu objectively wrong?
Wait, what?
He replied to something on Twitter. It was somebody posted a picture of an A5 Wagyu steak. Okay. It was like, how would you cook it? And Jordan Peterson's just talking about draining the fat from a Wagyu. That's the fucking point, you idiot.
He's such a goofball. Yeah.
Oh my god, he's stupid. And he was talking about cooking it to medium too. For a Wagyu? God.
He was brought on by the Daily Wire a couple of months ago and immediately just started posting like climate change denial things. And I think that's because that's what they paid him to do. Like they were like Jeremy Boring or whoever runs his division of racism.
The aptly named Jeremy Boring.
I'm so sad I share a name with him. Mr. Boring probably came to him and was like, yeah, you got to post some climate change denial. Otherwise, we're not going to get, this $300 million from, Exxon.
True,
we need to fund our shit, which is another spoiler.
I'm so surprised that Jordan Peterson went on with them. That's wild.
Yeah. You've got Jordan Peterson, Matt Walsh, Candace Owens, Michael Knowles.
Brett Cooper.
Yeah.
She's like the young one. She's the one that pops off on TikTok.
Yeah, I see her. Yep. Yeah. It's really a who's who of just awful human beings.
For sure.
It is a clan meeting.
Almost like every bad person within right-wing media that isn't attached to Fox News is with the Daily Wire or they're Steven Crowder.
Yeah.
Because he's taking a valiant stand.
So the Daily Wire offered Steven this contract, and Steven didn't like the contract.
No.
Because there's some certain provisions that we'll get to that he didn't like. But the contract conditions were, and this was preliminary, this was just like their first offer.
Yeah.
$50 million over 4 years for 4 days of work each week.
Christ, Brett,
so he's producing an episode 4 days out of the week. So he gets Fridays off.
$12.5 million a year.
Uh-huh.
If we were making that, I'd be sick.
Oh my God, dog.
I'd be sick.
I would be a right-wing grifter too.
Oh my God.
192 episodes a year and then a 4-week vacation. So he gets double what the average American gets, which I think is 2 weeks.
Oh, and also like
for salaried
fucking a billion times what the average American is paid to do actual real work.
So it's a very lucrative contract to just be racist. Because for those that don't know, Steven Crowder is like, as Hassan Piker put it, the Michael Jordan of being racist.
For sure.
Like he's
a nerd.
He does racism. Yeah, like he will slip back into like 1860s racism.
On that
the
show,
most crazy blacks that you
they
can imagine.
pull out the most obscure fucking racism that I have ever heard in my entire life.
They put in work for it, I'll be honest. Like the way we put in work for researching and getting ready for the show, they put in work to finding ways to be racist.
They're looking up like old slurs that like I don't know if I could repeat because they're so old that it's like nobody uses these words anymore. Do they still have that power? But I still won't say them.
Yeah,
like the O word. Mm-hmm. Y'all don't know what that is.
I don't even know what you're talking about.
So it's what they used to call back when the 1 drop rule was like policy. They used to call people who were 1/8 black. I don't even know if I can say
don't
it. Just
say
Google it. Yeah.
Y'all
just Google it.
So there was also a clause in the contract, and this is what Steven Crowder claims made him not want to take it.
Yeah.
And it was a clause that if he gets banned on any platform, so YouTube or any of the other platforms that they post his stuff to, if he gets banned and has his monetization reduced, restricted, whatever it may be, then he gets a 25% cut in what he makes.
Which it's like you're still making $9 million.
Yeah, if you get banned off YouTube, for example.
What?
And now, so Steven Crowder was upset about this. He released some videos back and forth with the Daily Wire where he seems to be saying the main point of contention is this 25% thing because he's been banned on YouTube for I don't know how long at this point because he does racism all the time.
He was banned like 2 or 3 times a year.
And here's the thing, okay?
Yeah.
I'm on Steven Crowder's side.
For real.
I'm on Crowder's side for this one because here's his argument, right? At least I'm on his side in terms of how his logic works
I know
out.
he's like trying to take a position that he's standing up for like regular content creators.
Yes.
The Daily Wire would steamroll. As a laborer.
Yes.
As Steven Crowder as a laborer. I understand.
There's tons of hypocrisy with what he has to say.
Yeah.
Because obviously he doesn't give a fuck about people having slave contracts, which is what he called this, by the way. He called this a slave contract, $50 million for 4 years. Yeah. It's crazy that he calls this a slave contract, but not working 9 to 5 minimum wage for your entire life. Anyway, his argument goes like this for the monetization stuff. He says, the right wing, they think that big tech, YouTube, Google, etc., all those companies, they're unfairly censoring conservatives, right? They are censoring conservatives for simply spreading conservative ideas. That's the first premise of his argument. And he says you shouldn't get punished for something that happens to you unfairly, right? If those two premises are true, then Steven Crowder, if he gets banned from YouTube for, again, unfair things because he's just spreading conservative ideology, then why should he be punished for it? Because his argument is that, okay, you want to play within the rules. Why am I getting punished for you, the company, wanting to play within the rules?
You say you advocate against these unfair rules, yet you want to play within them. Like, I kind of get it, but like, I don't know.
Well, it's stupid coming from his side, right? Because he's getting banned for saying racism.
For
doing
bad,
racism.
because the rules are good.
Yeah. But if the right wing, if the Daily Wire wants to claim that the big tech companies are unfairly censoring conservative ideas and conservatives and taking away monetization, etc., if they think that's true, then why is it fair for Steven Crowder to lose money for something you also agree is unfair?
True. But it's also, Steven Crowder would also say that, if you're taking sick days, you're not working, baby.
Yeah, right.
You're not working.
Exactly. And he was like on Labor Day, in his Labor Day episode was saying like, if you think you deserve less than a 30-hour work week, you're lazy. If you want to get paid more, you're like all this kind of, like all anti-workers.
Brother, I've been on overtime since Monday this week. You got soft hands.
Yeah. And so I think within the frame of right-wing narratives, that argument is fine. It's bleeding with hypocrisy.
I see what you mean.
Jeremy Boring's response, of course, is that Steven Crowder isn't a businessman, has never had to worry about being profitable because he's funded by billionaires and always has been. Steven Crowder has always received large sums of money to produce content that isn't profitable, that doesn't bring in nearly as many subscribers, listeners, viewers, whatever, as other major leftist content creators do. But he doesn't have to worry about profitability because he's just getting funded by people that own like oil companies, for example.
Do you think this deal was more so that Daily Wire could siphon off the funding that Steven Crowder was already getting?
Probably.
Rather than being about acquiring Steven Crowder's personality? Because I was going to say, Steven Crowder has publicly beefed with Ben Shapiro before.
Has he?
He, not necessarily publicly beefed in the way that like they're exchanging shots on Twitter.
Not beefed for moral reasons. Never for moral reasons.
No, but I do recall Steven Crowder like multiple times being like, me and Ben Shapiro, we have our differences, but like this was a good Ben Shapiro take, implying that usually Ben Shapiro doesn't have good takes or his takes are too center.
Now, some people listening that are on the left may disagree with me here.
Yeah.
And they may think this is too simplistic, but I do think it's just because Ben is Jewish. I think Steven Crowder, like legitimately, I think Steven Crowder, he won't ever say it, at least not now until the euphemism fully dies off. But I do think that Steven Crowder doesn't like Ben Shapiro as much as he may like other conservative commentators because Steven Crowder is basically a Nazi at this point.
Steven Crowder actually likes Michael Knowles more when Michael Knowles is objectively the worst Ben Shapiro.
Right, exactly. Like I think Steven deep down doesn't like Ben Shapiro. And this is why I think that some other leftist critiques of this have been pretty apt in saying that like Ben Shapiro is obviously a right-wing grifter, pushes some horrible rhetoric, but he will be a sort of like canary in the coal mines. You know what I mean?
100%.
Because he eventually will start screaming about like, and because he has before, right? In 2016, when he was critiquing Trump, wasn't fully on board the Trump train.
Even right now, when Matt Walsh have come out against against Trump as a candidate and have favored publicly Ron DeSantis.
Right. Like Ben Shapiro is always going to try to, although he has basically no morals,
he'll
always try to position himself to a point where he himself won't become a part of the kind of racialized bigotry, or just not even racialized, just bigotry in general that the right wing adopts and feeds off of. Because once he becomes a target, he won't really be sustainable in his business model. If we get to a point where, hatred in general towards Jewish people from the right grows enough, again, it's only so long until he's not one of the good ones anymore.
Him and all of the other, it's like tokens that have been taken up by Daily Wire and conservative media.
Candace Owens too, right?
Candace Owens. Oh God, what's his name? Larry Elder. Even like Blair is
Larry Elder in the Daily Wire?
I think he might.
That's
be.
Crazy.
I don't know.
They're gonna pick up Carrie Lake next. Just picking up failed candidates. That's awesome.
Does Blair White work with Daily Wire? No, they would never let. Yeah, they would never let her work with them.
I could see them taking on like a trans woman or a trans man at some point if they're willing to push the arguments enough. But same thing with Ben Shapiro, right?
I honestly couldn't. I couldn't
really?
With Matt Walsh being like the figure that he is within the Daily Wire now, because Matt Walsh is the person that you didn't know about until like last year or 2 years ago.
Yeah.
I feel like he was more for like the politic nerds.
Because I didn't know about him until you started sharing his takes with me, unfortunately.
Yeah, because I would see him like show up on Tucker Carlson as like, he used to go on Tucker Carlson as like the correspondent for like, he was out as like a theocratic fascist.
Oh, the racism correspondent.
Yeah. Like the racism guy. Like if you ever wanted like a theocratic fascist take, like Matt Walsh would come on. And so that's how I got put on to Matt Walsh, right? And then like the anti-LGBTQ rhetoric kind of like ramped up really hard, and I think he was like the first guy to like, not the first guy obviously, but he was the guy who really sunk his teeth into it.
Oh yeah,
as you can see with shit like What Is a Woman, and I think that's why more people know who Matt Walsh is now, or maybe my brain is just fucking gone.
Yeah, a fun thing on the Daily Wire movies is What Is a Woman and the one with Gina Carano.
Yeah,
they flopped
so hard. Really?
Oh, I know the Gina Carano one did. I don't think What Is a Woman flopped as hard because people like us were interested in it as well. But I know that they didn't like perform, which again is to the point that right-wing media outlets, not just Steven Crowder, but all of them really don't have to be profitable. They don't have to run a profit for their business model. They don't have to take in revenue because billionaires will just fund them because they send out messages that are conducive to the accumulation of profit by billionaires.
Oh, exactly. Yeah, they just have to put up a facade that they are profitable, not to entice more investors because the investors are already there because they're on message, but to make it so that the public perceives their ideas as popular. Yeah. And so they can feel like they're a part of the right movement.
Yeah, I mean, because you got to think that if billionaires are trying to maintain, billionaires, wealthy people, capitalists in general, whatever name you want to give them, if they're trying to maintain the economic system of capitalism, they need people in the media that are going to promote their ideas. This is a tactic, a strategy as old as time, right? You want people spitting your message that appear to be popular, appear to be fighting for the people, and this is why they have funneled money into people like Steven Crowder. Yeah. The Daily Wire has received money from oil billionaires in the past.
Love it.
PragerU was founded from money from oil billionaires. Fox News is controlled by the Murdochs. Like all of these right-wing news outlets have received money from some of the wealthiest people on the planet, some of the most profitable companies on the planet, because they want them to push a message that, denies climate change, focuses on culture war issues, so nobody actually focuses on economic issues or whatever the matter may be. The Daily Wire, I think, was founded by based on money from oil billionaires, oil millionaires that wanted people to push anti-climate change rhetoric. That's their point. And they don't need to be profitable. And that's how, and that gets me to the critique that like leftist media versus right-wing media is totally asymmetrical.
Oh,
100% asymmetrical.
Leftist media is people who got lucky on YouTube and blew up.
Yeah.
that is leftist media.
Like we have nobody approaching us asking if we need people funding us. Like nobody, like we would have to, and sponsorships aren't the same thing, right? Like sponsorships are a specific kind of business deal. We have nobody coming to us saying, hey, could we give you, $100,000 for you to, subtly put in this message to all of your media narratives, media critiques, etc. Nobody does this.
Absolutely
not.
But
people do this all the time for the right.
People. It's funny because it's another instance of the right winging pointing the finger when they're the ones who are doing the problem. What is that? Cry bullying or some shit like that. It's them saying, "Look at George. I wish George Soros was funding me.
No, he should.
Look at George Soros funding all of these left wing media outlets and George Soros running the world. No, it's the fucking Murdochs owning 6 of the biggest right-wing media companies, and it's these oil tycoons that are investing in right-wing media projects that are not profitable.
Like, I wish George Soros would give some leftists some money.
Yeah.
Like, goddamn. Like,
come on, I'm starving.
George Soros donates, like, a fraction of his wealth to various different, NGOs and causes around the world to help, like, liberal ideas or, like, liberal causes, liberal movements, that kind of thing. But in no way does he give money to, like, startup leftists that want to make a name for themselves. It doesn't happen. But the Daily Wire will take on not only startups, but also try to take on massive figures like Steven Crowder to push more of a message and to take in more of the oil tycoon money. Because that's how they make money. That's how their business model operates.
Even just going back to like the Steven Crowder Daily Wire story, I think it's so funny that he took like, as a capitalist, Steven Crowder took a principled stance against like them saying that if you get banned, we're not paying you as much.
Free market, baby.
Because isn't that kind of how it's supposed like? And this is what Ben Shapiro said, not to quote Ben Shapiro in a good way, but like, you know what I'm saying? Like, he's like, if you're not making money, why the fuck would we pay you?
Right, exactly.
Like, this is what Steven Crowder argues for when it's the single mother who just had her rent raised.
Exactly. Yeah, that's the craziest part, is that when somebody can't work, some member of the working class that works like a 9-to-5 job or works, a 12-hour shift, the night shift, whatever it may be, when they can't work, he's like, they should just fucking die. They don't deserve welfare. They don't deserve food stamps. We need to completely abolish any social safety nets that we have. But when it comes to Steven Crowder, he thinks $50 million over 4 years is a slave contract. He thinks a 25% reduction in what he makes because he gets banned is somehow
because he can make zero revenue.
It's crazy.
Zero revenue. He's like, if I'm making zero revenue from YouTube, I'm only making $9 million a year.
Yeah. And
fuck off.
That's what Mr. Boring pointed out, is that like Steven Crowder wants money for nothing. He wants to get paid despite not making money.
Steven Crowder is the welfare queen.
The sense of entitlement is crazy. It is crazy. But I do think that deep down Steven Crowder doesn't like Ben because he's Jewish. I think that's the correct take.
I think that's a good take. I think that is
right
the take here.
And I think eventually, because like you'll see Ben Shapiro now, is like positioning himself as the more moderate conservative in the Daily Wire, which is crazy.
It happened a couple months ago. Like, we literally watched this happen. I think it was shortly after like Trump announced his candidacy. Right after the midterms.
And back during 2016, Ben was an anti-Trumper. He didn't support Donald Trump. He said he supported the third-party candidate, whoever the dude was, Gary Johnson or whatever.
Doesn't fucking matter.
He supported the third-party candidate, and he would be on talk shows. I can't remember which one at this point, but he was on some talk show back in 2016, 2015, talking about how Donald Trump's movement includes a lot of anti-Semites. Yeah, and how it seems problematic to put your weight behind someone who seems so proto-authoritarian. And Ben Shapiro has since shedded those critiques of Donald Trump.
Obviously because he has use them anymore. Because the Republican Party thrives on their homogeneity or whatever. How the fuck you say that?
Because to stay profitable back when he was, I don't know if he was ever independent, but to stay culturally relevant within the right, he had to get on board the Trump train. He did get on board the Trump train. He was an active, ardent defender of Donald Trump up until he's now supporting Ron DeSantis. But he's positioned himself now as the moderate, and I think he knows deep down that this trend rightward of the right wing in this country, of just the mainstream Republican Party, is trouble for him. And it's going to be trouble for his similar colleagues as well that are a part of marginalized groups. I don't know what he's going to do.
Crazy.
Like, I don't think he can be saved, obviously. Like, I don't think we'll bring him over to the left.
Oh, no.
or even to the center.
Absolutely not.
Because he's an egregious person.
Ben Shapiro shows up on CNN in like 12 years.
I think once we
he replaces Don Lemon.
Once we see him start to critique even people in his own office, like the Daily Wire, for being anti-Semitic or pushing some kind of, Kanye West adjacent theories, I think then we will know, like, oh shit, we're at a bad point.
Which is kind of crazy because the Daily Wire guys have kind of done a good job at staying away from overt anti-Semitism.
They've kept the euphemisms around.
They've kept the euphemisms around, but they've done a good job at using the more niche ones.
Yeah, and that's Steven Crowder can't do that, by the way.
That's
and that's why a lot of people have said, they've theorized that other people of the Daily Wire don't have a similar provision to where if they get banned, they lose money. They don't think that other people do, but they think they wanted it for Steven because they know Steven's gonna get banned.
Well, I was gonna say, because I don't think I've ever heard of Michael Knowles getting banned from YouTube.
Right. Ben Shapiro doesn't get banned.
When he took that, there's a video of Michael Knowles taking like a political compass test that
I've watched it. I
think I sent it to you. Yeah, like when I first watched it, and he says some like fucked shit.
Oh my god, yeah.
He's picking the wrong answers. I can tell you. Like Michael Knowles is not getting banned.
No.
Matt Walsh is Matt Walsh. Yeah, Matt Walsh is on YouTube, but he posts clips to YouTube, right? Or does he do his whole show on YouTube?
I have no idea. I only ever see clips on Twitter when people freak out about it. I don't consciously watch Matt Walsh.
Sometimes I do. Sometimes I seek it out, but not in a way that some right-wingers used to watch us because we're funny.
Well, because it's like people like Ben Shapiro, Matt Walsh, Michael Knowles, Jordan Peterson now, they are pretty good at speaking through seemingly intellectual language and using code to cover for their racism or bigotry or sometimes anti-Semitism. Steven Crowder is, again, the LeBron James of racism and bigotry. He doesn't care to hide it.
Even like, I wouldn't even say that Matt Walsh like speaks intellectually. I think that people within the Daily Wire.
Ben certainly tries to.
Ben tries to, absolutely. Michael Knowles tries to. But I think a lot of like the side guys within the Daily Wire just have such a firm grasp on like their niche culture war issue. Because like Candace Owens does not. I have a tweet that I screenshotted from Candace Owens that I forgot to read when we were talking about the Tyre Nichols shit. Because it's so fucking egregious, right? Like, I can't find the tweet anymore. But anyway, she starts talking about how she lists 7 reasons why something was justified. I read it to you while we were playing PEX, while we were waiting for the next game to load.
I remember.
And she says something like, he was on drugs, he was running from the cops, he has a previous criminal history, and shit like that. And people in the comments are rightfully flaming her because they're like, none of this fits the description of the Tyre Nichols case. And she's like, oh, actually, I'm talking about this other case of police brutality. But it's like, you intentionally left that vague.
Right.
You knew exactly what you were doing.
Was the biggest national news story at the time.
You're just going to be talking about someone else and think people are going to get it? Or are you trying to poison the well here?
Exactly.
It's just like during Breonna Taylor when she said Breonna Taylor was high on drugs. It's like Candace Owens just fucking lies. But she's got a grasp on the culture war issue and what her base thinks of that issue and what she can do to twist that issue.
And see, that's the thing is that Candace Owens she has absolutely no convictions.
Oh, no.
No beliefs at all. But she will hop on issues like police brutality and run defense for the white supremacist systems, right?
Oh, yeah.
Ben won't do that for anti-Semitism, I don't think.
No.
I don't think he will run defense for potentially... I mean... Because, like, he obviously didn't run defense for Kanye West. He was against Donald Trump at the beginning. I don't think when push comes to shove, people are potentially getting brutalized in the street. I don't think he will. And once we see that happen, I'm gonna know, like, oh, we're at a no turning back
a lot of
point.
the times Ben Shapiro would still maintain a facade of still being the anti-Trump as a personality, but pro-Trump because his policies are good, which in a weird way undercut a lot of the things that Trump was trying to do within the Republican Party. He was trying to set himself apart from the establishment, yet Ben Shapiro's commentary kind of highlighted how he was just the establishment candidate with more racism as like a personal flair.
Yeah.
But it's just it's a weird one. In a weird way, Ben Shapiro is the most principled Wire member.
Yeah, because I do think he believes what he says for the most part, but I also think that he knows that trouble's afoot, if you will.
For sure.
Yeah.
For sure.
I think he knows that the racism extravaganza is knocking on his door. And it's about to become an anti-Semitism extravaganza because, I mean, look at where we're heading on the right,
Look at the movement that he is fostering.
I think that rounds out news on Daily Wire. I have a couple of extra news stories to run through before we dip out here.
What do we got going on?
So the Senate recently held hearings on the Ticketmaster monopoly in regards to Taylor Swift and some other artist that I don't remember was also having a similar problem with Ticketmaster. For those that don't know, Ticketmaster prices were fucking insane, like $11,000.
Thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars for
because
Taylor Swift
Ticketmaster has this like way of bumping up ticket prices so that everything is super inflated and that they can cut a massive profit off of it. They functionally have a monopoly over everything.
And also just like fees. The weird fucking fees that Ticketmaster and a bunch of ticket applications throw on tickets.
Yeah, it's
kind of nuts.
It's a good thing that they're investigating it, right?
Yeah.
But the Senate hearing, the committee hearing, I don't remember what committee this was in, was so corny. All they did was just read Taylor Swift quotes, like at that, like they'd go on their monologue about how stopping the monopoly is something we have to do, blah blah blah, and then they'd be like, Ticketmaster needs to look in the mirror and say, "I'm the problem, it's me." I think that's an exact quote actually from a senator. Like, it's a clown show, bruh. Like, I don't know. That was so funny to me, though.
Jesus Christ,
yeah.
Bruh. When I walked in this hearing, when the Ticketmaster representative walked in, I knew you were trouble when you walked in.
You had Mike Lee, senator from Utah, I think, saying like, "Oh, I was really hoping for Republicans to win the Senate so that I could take the seat back from Amy Klobuchar, but she's chair captain and I'm in the bleachers."
I guess I'm just gonna have to shake it off.
That's exactly what it was. It's like, what are they doing? Oh my God. Obviously
they're all like 82.
Yeah.
Oh, no.
Obviously, I think that investigating this is good, right? They have a monopoly functionally, and I think that there's been a take like, why are they even doing this? There's so many other problems. Like, yeah, but a monopoly is still a monopoly.
I'm pro trust busting. Like the government can do multiple things at once.
Right. I don't think it'll come to a trust bust, if I'm being honest. I don't know if I have faith in them to do that, but that'd be cool.
I wish.
Maybe some new laws to make it so you can't scalp so easily would be nice. In more areas than just this too, like everywhere else, especially like electronics. I know it's a big thing.
Oh my God! They should have had a fucking PS5 hearing.
PlayStation 5, like GPUs, people will buy them up and then charge like $3,000 for one that was $500 initially. Yeah.
I know a big issue with like GPUs and computer parts, graphics cards specifically, was the fucking just Bitcoin mining.
Oh, that too. Horrible for the environment.
Horrible for the environment. God. Horrible for you and your ability to get bitches.
Yeah, true. If you're doing it.
Exactly.
Another news story, though, is that a guy from a representative from Arizona who's in the House, Ruben Gallo, announced that he's going to be running for the 2024 Arizona Senate race.
Oh, against Sinema?
Running as a Democrat. Well, Sinema hasn't announced if she's going to run again yet, but she's an independent now. He's announced he's running for the Democrat seat. We don't know who's going to be the Republican, maybe like Carrie Lake or Blake Masters, maybe, out of Arizona. But he's a fairly progressive guy, like your average Democrat, really, you know, supports $15 wage, climate regulations, that sort of thing. He would just be a Democrat voting for Democratic policies.
Yeah, just a guy.
Whatever.
Really. I'd rather have him than Carrie Lake, though.
Rather have him than Carrie Lake, or rather have him over Kyrsten Sinema.
Rather have him over fucking school shooter Blake Masters.
Yeah, so he's announced that he's running, obviously would be better than any of the other options.
Yeah.
And it's unclear if Sinema's going to run, but if she does run, it looks like the math works out that she can't win regardless, and she would probably most likely just play spoiler for the GOP candidate, whoever it is. As we've talked about before. It's tough math for the Democrat to win because she's going to siphon votes away from him.
How, like, who likes her?
It doesn't seem, well, nobody, right? She's got like in Arizona, I think, I don't remember what the data was specifically, but I think it was like 13% of people said they would vote for her over a Democrat. She's
like, got like a Mitch McConnell approval rating,
right? Like nobody like she's in a blue state. Arizona's blue. Nobody wants you there. So that's some other fun news. And then in other Senate news, Adam Schiff announced he's running for Senate in California.
Okay.
So that's cool, I guess. Dianne Feinstein, oldest member of Congress right now, might finally be going away for good.
Nice.
That would be cool.
I fucked with that.
Lower the average age
It's not like she was going to be in there much longer, but it's always nice to get her out.
Yeah. Before some freak universe scenario happens where a Republican governor's in place and they appoint a Republican to the...
God, dude.
Yeah, so that's some extra news for y'all to close out this episode.
Some legislative news. I'm really excited, looking forward. It's like end of January. We are getting closer and closer with each week to finding out who the Republican candidate is going to be for the 2020. I was thinking about that on my drive up. I was like, oh my God, it's 2023. Wait, 2024. That's an election year.
Yeah, and by the end of the year, we will probably get our first debates for the Republican primary.
I hope like Ben Carson runs again.
Oh my fuck, bro. We got John Bolton, right? He's cool.
We're jolting for Bolton.
We're jolting for. I don't know if he's formally announced yet. I think he might be edging us with that announcement. But I'm thinking he's going to, because he's like the neocon that I can imagine running if anybody else does.
Just like a regular guy.
I don't know if he'll get enough money to debate though. Unfortunately,
think so?
Because you got to like hit a donation threshold, right, to get onto the stage. Fun way of measuring who gets to be included in a primary, by the way.
I know it's not till next year. I'm so fucking excited for like the RNC.
Oh my God.
I'm so excited to see like who are they going to bring out? Because last RNC,
that's not till like October of 24 though.
At the last RNC, didn't they? No, they didn't bring out Kyle Rittenhouse. That didn't happen until after. But they brought the people who got that one picture taken of them. Yeah. Because they were posted up with guns on their front yard while like a peaceful protest was going on.
They brought them in because they were like, they like got some shit on social media.
Because they're defending democracy.
Madison Cawthorn stood up. That was a good one. That was fun. But yeah, I'm excited.
I miss that guy.
Yeah, it'll be pretty soon when we start hearing about that. This year sometime, people will start announcing.
Because they just appointed the not new RNC chair, the same RNC chair, and I know that was big news.
Yeah.
Because like everybody hates her or something.
Ronna McDaniel, they all hate her. It looks like Biden's probably going to be running again as president, which sucks, but like...
Who else is going to run?
Kamala Harris? Anyway, that ends up the episode, I think.
It really does.
Thanks for participating, everyone, in this racism extravaganza.
I hope you have a wonderful non-racist week.
Exactly. An anti-racist week, if you will.
Oh.
But before you go, we got to thank our favorite anti-racists.
That's right.
That's our Patreons that humbly fund our episodes. Although you may not be oil tycoons, you may not be the richest people in the world.
Soros.
You may not have a tax evasion bank account out of Delaware or the Cayman Islands or whatever.
True. You're not offshore. You may not be hiding your money.
But you are investing in us, and that's what matters.
You've got a couple bucks to throw our way, and that means the world.
And we got to thank those people. So special thanks to Quickest Scrapbook Layouts, Nikki Nine Lives, Kaden Kraut, Lord T, Chris the Postman, Christy Beck, Talia Katz, 40% Spite, Andrew Harris, Mike Chaplinsky, Mattias T, The B-Plot, Omar Zuno, Clayton LaFed, Mark Yeager, Sarah McRoberts, Dylan B, Kaz, Caleb Joy, Jim Bobs, Carl D, Rich Toro, Tari, Gavin Meyer, Maldonado, Hunter W, Fergalaki, Max Vasquez, Jacob Rogers, Colton Newberry, Fixer Punk, Jim Egbers, Jeff Munzie, Ted Cruz, Boy Toy, Bagel Burrito, Cincy Alex, Bread, Joe Stenstrom, Austin Reed, Adrian Sandoval, Chloe Sam 601, Colleen Cuts, Timothy Espinoza, Gregory Isn't My Name, Veryuk, Jennifer DeVoe, Big Bird Titty, Eliza, Crawfishin, Benneth Bennington III, Alexia Benanti, Nick, Big Booty Beatdown, Moses Zeheya Tajeda. I'm sorry if I'm saying that wrong. And my mom, thank you all for supporting the show on Patreon. Again, I just updated the thank you list. So if I missed you or if I said your name wrong, just DM us. Correct me.
Facts.
Because we don't want to get them wrong. We don't want to miss anybody.
It's your special shout out.
Because we love you guys.
That's right.
And thanks for listening to the episode.
Socially.
We'll see y'all next week.
I love you.